will 2025 mean for us? Well, the answer, hopefully, to that burning question lies on my phone line right now with Mal Fletcher, Oxfordshire social commentator and futurist and chairman of 2030 Plus. We're on to talk about 2025, and I guess in some ways it's easy to think about certain things progressing like AI, but then in other ways there might be things that pop up that we have no idea are coming, which I find quite exciting. But I guess AI is where we should start, Mal, in terms of already when you're searching stuff online, you might not even have noticed, I suppose, that the first thing that pops up now, if you use a certain search engine, is a sort of AI summary of the things it's found on the internet. My answer phone messages on my mobile are now being auto-translated. Things are starting to creep in, aren't they?
Yeah, it's growing in power and reach all the time, which is, has some downsides, but some great big sides. And to focus on that, I think this year we're going to see a lot more about what we call specialized AI chips to support edge computing. This is where you and I can perform AI processes directly from our phones or devices rather than doing it via the cloud, which is what we do at the moment. So we'll also see a lot more activity with what we call AI agents. These are very powerful little platforms that can automatically access and utilize many other tools online without being asked by us, and then use them to make autonomous decisions to reach our goals. So that might cut down on the time we need to perform mundane tasks. And here's the other thing, AI agents will play a big role in developing humanoid robots. So we're going to hear a lot more about that in 2025 from groups like Tesla. And part of that discussion will focus on the mental health impact of human-like machines, because many of us feel when we first look at a machine that looks human, when we interact with it, we first feel positive about it. If it's a novelty after all. But as the machine's capabilities become more human-like, we feel a growing sense of unease, and that can lead to some anxiety. So designers are going to have to walk a fine line between what's cool and what has a negative human impact.
Interesting. And my husband and I always refer to it as kind of a bit Black Mirror-esque, if you've ever seen that show on the BBC or on Netflix. Charlie Brooker's kind of slightly disturbing dystopian future. Things like, AI being implanted into humans, us having like a chip in our brains, Mal. Are we getting closer to sort of stuff like that in sci-fi films becoming a reality in 2025, do you think?
Yeah, very much so, actually. The UK is deliberately positioning itself, Sophie, to take a leading role in implant technologies, bridging the gap between research, which AI is very good at, UK is very good at, and the practical application of implants. So this year and the next year, we're going to hear about companies like Neuralink and others producing brain implants, for example, that are as small as a grain of sand using what we call nanotechnology. They'll also start to build implants that are made from biodegradable materials so that they just dissolve in the body after they've served their purpose. And that could reduce the number of surgeries people need to implant chips. Again, there are huge ethical questions in this, and Black Mirror sort of pointed to these. They need to be addressed when it comes to implants, especially when they become a lifestyle choice rather than a medical necessity. So, we're going to hear a lot this year about cochlear implants that are AI-powered, retinal implants that use AI to give much more accurate vision, a lot of other things about implants, but there are questions about consent and privacy and data security that have to be answered.
Interesting. I was talking to my in-laws over Christmas about us having to sign off a sort of genetic AI kind of thing for my eldest, who's at secondary, and he pays for his lunches with his fingerprint. So you have to sort of sign a little waiver saying that they can hold his fingerprint on file until whenever it is, 2018, which feels very sci-fi compared to when we were at school, Mal. But there's also, the big thing with that generation and the teenagers or the teenagers to be right now is phone screens, social media, calls for tougher rules on the companies after Australia banned it for the younger generation. I was out for lunch with some of the BBC Oxford girls over the weekend, one of whom's got a young daughter, and I was talking about the challenges of phones and gaming and sort of controlling it all. And she was saying she thought maybe by the time her daughter was 18, it might all be it might all be illegal. I mean, is that something you think we're going to see more countries following Australia next year?
Yeah, we may do. I think governments are watching it at the moment because although Australia's made the decision to go down that road, they haven't yet said how they're going to implement it. And that's the big question. I mean, it is high time that governments did something to protect kids with social media. They're not in a position to make informed decisions at their age, either about the content they consume or the content they produce online. But creating a total ban for children could boost the amount of data collected about them. I mean, how can online algorithms gauge a person's age without linking their name to other personal information like a legal record of their birth date? That might also need, of course, contact details for their parents, including addresses and phone numbers. That's more data. Will governments insist on more than one form of verification? How secure will that be against hacking? And how will children be protected in other areas of the internet? A young teenager doesn't really need social media to gain access to scams or abuse or even online pornography if they know how it's done. So if they're serious about protecting children, I think governments should also do more now to help parents and teachers train kids in data literacy. We need programs right from primary school, I think, to teach people how to use things like critical thinking and analytical thinking skills when they're online, because it would help us all to avoid scams and respond to things like false information or bullying.
Now, on false information, news, the way we consume our news, obviously we're very invested in this here at BBC Radio Oxford. What do you think in the next 12 months in terms of how people are consuming their news and how that might change?
Yeah, well, you're right to be concerned, but also I think, I just want to say this for your sake. Presenters that show empathy are going to be in demand all the way through because machines can't empathise. They don't have that ability to share. Yeah, woohoo. So some good news. But look, already in the UK, as in the US, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok are seen by many, especially younger people under 45, as a primary source of news and editorial. It's only over 45s that go first to analog or even digital BBC and others for their primary source of news now. So we just need to adapt to that. And alongside the growth of social news, we're going to hear more about what's called immersive journalism, which brings in things like virtual reality and augmented reality, those goofy glasses, to allow us to, as it were, step into a news story as it's being reported. Now, it's just an AI simulation, a 3D version of a disaster zone, for example, but it might allow people to emotionally connect with the news in a given situation. And 65% of news organizations in the US are already experimenting with that kind of immersive technologies. That's a major breakthrough for news.
Interesting. Oh, yeah, sort of the crossing over between news and drama, which I suppose we've seen a bit of with things like the Post Office telly in 2024. Thank you, Mal. Always interesting to talk to you. Mal Fletcher, Oxfordshire social commentator and futurist. You can find him online if you want to see more of his predictions for 2025.